My daughter-in-law said, "You're the most useless woman ever," at Christmas dinner. So I answered back. The room had been filled with laughter just seconds earlier, the kind that only Christmas morning could bring. Wrapping paper was still scattered across the floor, the smell of cinnamon and pine drifted through the air, and the kids were buzzing with excitement. But when Clara's words sliced through the warmth of the moment, the sound felt sharper than broken glass. Everyone else in the living room kept laughing, unaware, while my heart tightened like someone had slammed a door on it. I stood slowly from the table, refusing to let her think she had crushed me. "Then maybe," I said in a steady voice, "you should stop calling me whenever you need money. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. This story gets much more intense, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But let me back up and tell you next." For a moment, silence thickened around us. Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the rage flickering there, hidden under the glossy mask she always wore in front of the others. And that was the moment I knew the rest of this day was about to take a turn I could never forget. Within minutes, I'd end up dialing 911. But before I explain how it reached that point, I need to take you back to the beginning of that morning, the one I thought would be nothing but joy and family. My name is Helen Carter. At 67 years old, I believed I had seen nearly every kind of family drama life could throw at me. I was wrong. Christmas Day taught me otherwise. It started so beautifully, so deceptively peaceful. My son, Daniel, had asked me to join his family for the holiday. That in itself was rare these past few years. Usually Clara, his wife, had one excuse or another for why celebrations had to be small and simple. She didn't always say it outright, but I often felt that small meant without me. Yet this year, she'd been oddly enthusiastic, her voice almost sweet on the phone. "Of course, come. The kids will be thrilled to have you here." Her cheer had felt staged, but my heart wanted to believe it was real. So I told myself maybe things were changing. At exactly 10 a.m., as Daniel had requested, I arrived at their large suburban home outside Denver. The house looked like something out of a magazine. Snow dusted along the rooftop, twinkling lights wrapped around the porch rails, and a wreath so polished it didn't seem handmade. In my hands I carried two things I always brought: a carefully wrapped bag of gifts for my grandchildren, Ethan and Lily, and my famous apple crisp, the recipe I'd been perfecting for decades. The front door swung open before I could knock. "Grandma Helen." Lily rushed out, her cheeks pink from excitement. She was just 14 but still had the same spark she'd had as a little girl. She wrapped her arms around me with such genuine joy that I nearly teared up. Behind her came Ethan, tall now at 16, trying to keep his cool teenage expression intact. But even he cracked a smile as he reached for the bags in my arms. "Here, let me help you." Their voices alone made the trip worth it. Clara appeared in the doorway next, her lips curved into what I'd come to recognize as her practiced smile, the kind that looked polite but never warmed her eyes. "Helen," she said smoothly, "so glad you could make it. The kids wouldn't stop asking when you'd arrive." Daniel followed, giving me a warm hug that made me forget, for a moment, all the tension. For the first couple of hours, everything seemed normal. We opened gifts together, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. I watched Ethan light up when he showed me his new video game, and Lily twirled around in the sweater I'd bought her. The joy in their faces was the kind of thing every grandmother lives for. In the kitchen, Clara and I worked side by side, or at least that's how it looked from the outside. She commanded the space like a stage actress, making sure every dish was plated perfectly, her movements precise. When she pulled the turkey from the oven, golden and steaming, she looked at me with that rehearsed sweetness. "Helen, could you grab the desserts from the counter? Just want to make sure everything's ready for dinner." I turned to the counter. Pumpkin pie, chocolate cake, a neat little store-bought apple tart. But no sign of the dish I had poured 3 hours of love into. "Where's my apple crisp?" I asked, scanning the counters again. Clara's smile twitched. "Oh, that. I put it in the pantry. We already have plenty of desserts, and honestly, Daniel mentioned that store-bought things are just easier when it comes to cleanup." Her voice was casual, almost dismissive, but the sting hit hard, like she'd brushed aside not just a dish, but 30 years of tradition. I steadied myself. "That recipe's been part of our holidays forever. It's Ethan's favorite." "Well," Clara shrugged lightly, turning back to the turkey, "people's tastes change." I should have let it go. I should have swallowed that little cut and walked away. But there was something in her tone. Something cold, designed to erase me. And it woke something inside me that refused to stay silent. Clara, I said firmly, I spent hours yesterday making that crisp. The least you could do is serve it. And that's when her mask slipped completely. Her voice shot up like a whip. Hours? Hours to make a dessert no one even asked for? This is exactly the problem, Helen. You just assume we need your input. Assume you're welcome to add yourself to everything. Assume we can't function without you hanging around. The kitchen seemed to freeze. All I could hear was the bubbling of the stove behind us, while in the other room, Daniel and the kids still laughed, oblivious to the storm unfolding just 10 feet away. I lowered my voice. I brought it because that's what family does. That's what I've always done. Her eyes burned. Family? She hissed. Family doesn't show up uninvited and rearrange my kitchen. Family doesn't criticize how I raise my kids. And family doesn't expect to be worshipped just because they're old. Each word hit me like a slap. I whispered, I've never done those things. Haven't you? She pressed closer, her words sharp as knives. You reorganized the fridge last month when you thought I was storing things wrong. 2 weeks ago, you hinted Ethan needed more structure. Should I keep going? I stared at her, realizing all my small, well-meaning acts had been twisted into weapons she'd saved for this exact moment. I was trying to help. You were trying to control, she shot back. Just like you always did with Daniel. Just like you're doing now with my children. The advice, the gifts that come with strings, the way you act like you know better than everyone. The accusation about gifts cut deep. What strings, Clara? When have I ever? The money, Helen, she snapped, her voice slicing through me. The little loans, the cash you slip Daniel when you think I'm not looking. You think that doesn't come with strings? You think we don't feel trapped by your generosity? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I give because I love him, I whispered. No. You give because it makes you feel needed. Because it gives you power. And at that moment, I realized this Christmas dinner wasn't just about apple crisp. It was about something much bigger. Something that would tear the day apart and leave scars I could never have imagined. Dinner was supposed to be the highlight of the day. Plates were laid out neatly, candles flickered on the table, and the golden turkey sat in the center like a crown. Daniel called everyone over, his voice full of cheer. All right, time to eat. The kids rushed in, talking over each other about who got the better gift, while I forced myself to take my seat. Clara sat across from me, her smile painted back on as though nothing had just happened in the kitchen. But I could still feel the sting of her words clinging to me like smoke. Daniel passed dishes around, his eyes shining with the kind of pride men feel when their family looks happy and full. He didn't notice the tension. He never did. And maybe that was my fault. I'd always shielded him, smoothed over things, kept my pain hidden so he wouldn't feel caught in the middle. The kids chattered happily. Ethan leaned over and whispered, Grandma, did you see the basketball I got? It's the one I wanted for months. His face lit up, his eyes searching for my approval. I smiled and touched his hand. I saw it, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Lily tugged at my sleeve, showing me her charm bracelet. Grandma, look, every piece means something. This one's for family. She said it so innocently, not realizing the words were cutting into me, because sitting there at that very table, I wasn't sure if Clara still considered me part of theirs. We bowed our heads to say grace. Daniel's voice carried warmth and gratitude, thanking God for the joy of family and the blessing of togetherness. I tried to whisper, Amen, but the words stuck in my throat. The first bites of food were quiet, filled with the clinking of forks against plates. Daniel started talking about his job, telling a light-hearted story about a mix-up at the office that made Ethan laugh so hard milk nearly came out of his nose. Clara laughed too, her hand resting gently on Daniel's arm, playing the part of a perfect wife. No one else saw the flicker in her eyes when she glanced at me across the table. I ate mechanically, each bite tasting like nothing. I could feel the space between me and them growing wider with every laugh I wasn't part of. And then it came, the moment that made the air shift again. Grandma, aren't you going to have any apple crisp? Lily asked sweetly, tilting her head. Before I could open my mouth, Clara jumped in, her voice smooth, rehearsed. Oh, honey. Grandma didn't bring apple crisp this year. But look at this beautiful chocolate cake. Your favorite. The lie slid out so easily that even I almost doubted my own memory for a second. But Ethan wasn't fooled. His voice carried the firmness only a teenager could muster when he sensed injustice. That's not true. I saw it in the pantry when I grabbed napkins. It's the same one Grandma always makes. The one with the crumbly top. Why are you hiding it? Clara's smile froze. Her jaw tightened so slightly I might have missed it if I wasn't looking straight at her. That's just leftovers, sweetheart. Nothing special. Ethan's chair scraped the floor as he started to stand. We want some anyway. Sit down. Clara's voice cracked like a whip, sharper than anyone had ever heard her speak to him. The kids froze. Daniel's fork stopped midair. The entire room fell silent. Everything okay? Daniel asked carefully, glancing between us. Of course, Clara laughed, brittle and forced. Just trying to keep things organized. You know how chaotic Christmas can get. But Ethan wasn't finished. His eyes, so much like Daniel's when he was young, locked onto me. Grandma, did you make it? The apple crisp with oats on top. The room seemed to hold its breath. I looked at him, then at Clara. Her eyes warned me, don't you dare. This was my choice. Let her version of reality stand or risk everything by telling the truth. I straightened my shoulders. Yes. Ethan. I made it yesterday. His face lit up. Then why can't we? Because, Clara cut in, her voice rising, sometimes adults make decisions about what belongs at the table. Not every old recipe needs to be dragged out just because it's tradition. The insult was subtle enough that Daniel missed it. But it hit me square in the chest. Not every tradition needs to be preserved just because it's old. She wasn't talking about dessert anymore. She was talking about me. I lowered my eyes to my plate, but my heart was pounding so loud it felt like the whole room could hear it. I whispered, I see. Clara smirked slightly and served herself a thick slice of chocolate cake. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. But I didn't understand her. Not at all. What I was beginning to see was that this wasn't about food, or desserts, or even Christmas. It was about her trying piece by piece to erase me from their lives. And suddenly, memories of the past year flooded in. Birthdays I hadn't been invited to, dinners I only learned about after they'd happened, vague excuses about keeping things small. Times when Daniel brushed off my questions, apologizing for forgetting to call, promising we'd do something next time. Times when the kids' busy schedules were used as an excuse, even though their social media told me they weren't too busy for everyone else. This wasn't about apple crisp. It wasn't about today. It was a pattern. A plan. A slow erasure of me from the family I had poured my life into. And as I sat there at that festive table, surrounded by laughter that no longer included me, I felt a cold realization settle deep in my chest. Clara was winning. The rest of dinner felt like a cruel play I was forced to watch. Clara had slipped her mask back on, laughing softly at Daniel's jokes, pouring drinks, acting every bit the perfect hostess. But beneath that surface, I could feel her resentment burning, aimed only at me. Every time our eyes met across the table, her look said more than words ever could. You don't belong here. Daniel didn't notice. He never noticed. He told stories about work, about how his boss messed up an important presentation and how everyone in the office laughed about it. The kids giggled at his animated retelling, and Clara leaned on his shoulder like they were the picture of love. I sat there, smiling weakly, pretending to listen, while inside my chest it felt like something was breaking. When the plates were cleared, Clara carried out the desserts she had chosen, laying them down like trophies. Chocolate cake. Pumpkin pie. That glossy store-bought tart. Not my crisp. I could feel Emma's, no Lily's, eyes darting between the table and the pantry door. Ethan tapped his fork impatiently. But neither of them said anything more. Clara's sharp voice earlier had scared them. Finally, Daniel raised his glass. To family. To tradition. To another year together. His words were warm, but they felt like salt on an open wound. Family. Tradition. I wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out of me was only a quiet sigh. After the toast, Clara leaned toward him, whispering something I couldn't hear. He chuckled, kissed her cheek, and the two of them looked, for all the world, like a couple deeply in sync. But I knew better. I knew the look she had given me in the kitchen, the venom in her voice, the way she twisted my kindness into weapons. "Grandma wants some pie?" Lily asked sweetly, breaking my spiral of thoughts. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, darling. Just a small piece." Clara's hand slid the plate toward me, her fingers brushing the edge like she was claiming it as hers. Her smile never faltered, but the challenge in her eyes was clear. "Play nice, or you'll regret it." I tried to swallow the pie, but each bite felt heavy, tasteless. I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head. Family doesn't expect to be catered to just because they're old. Was that what she thought of me? A burden? A nuisance? Just an aging woman desperate for attention? After dessert, Daniel suggested the kids show me their new gifts. He wanted me to feel included. Bless his heart, he tried. Lily dragged me upstairs to see her new room decorations, fairy lights strung across her bed frame, little trinkets scattered everywhere. She held up her bracelet again, pointing at each charm, telling me stories about what they meant. Ethan showed me his new sneakers, already laced perfectly, as if he was preparing for a big game. For a while I almost forgot. Their joy was real, untouched by the poison that hung between me and Clara. But the moment couldn't last. Clara's voice carried from downstairs, calling them back down. And just like that, the warmth I felt slipped away again. When we returned to the kitchen, Clara had already begun cleaning up, moving with brisk efficiency, scraping plates with too much force. Daniel was in the garage with Ethan, fixing something, and Lily had gone upstairs again. It was just me and her. Exactly what she wanted. She didn't waste time. "I suppose you're proud of yourself," she said sharply, not even looking up. I set the dish I was holding into the sink gently. "I don't know what you mean." "The little scene at dinner. Making me look bad in front of the kids." Her voice was bitter, controlled. "Very mature, Helen. I didn't make you look bad. I told the truth." She slammed a plate into the sink so hard I flinched. Finally she turned to me, her eyes cold and unflinching. "Let's stop pretending. This is my family. My home. My children. Daniel is my husband. And I am tired of acting like your constant presence is welcome." Her words cut deeper than anything she'd said before. It wasn't just hostility. It was possession. Like she owned them. Like I was just a shadow she was trying to scrub out. "Daniel is my son," I whispered, my throat tight. "Those children are my grandchildren. You can't erase me from their lives because you feel threatened." "Threatened?" She laughed, but it was empty, cruel. "Helen, look at yourself. You're old. Alone. Living in that little apartment of yours. The only reason anyone tolerates you is because you write checks. Do you honestly think I'm threatened by that?" Her words stung like acid. My hands trembled at my sides. "If that's true," I said quietly, "then why do you keep taking my money?" For the first time, her face faltered. Just for a second. Then she turned away, muttering, "That's different." "How?" I pressed, my voice shaking but firm. "Family helps family. You said it yourself. But it seems I'm only family when you need something. When it's convenient." She spun around, her voice rising. "You don't understand the pressure we're under. The mortgage, Daniel's job, the kids' needs. When you hand out money, we take it because we have to. But don't mistake that for us wanting you here. We don't." Her honesty hit like a stone to the chest. All those times I'd told myself my contributions were appreciated, that they loved me for my love, not my wallet, it had been a lie I told myself. In her eyes, I was nothing more than a bank. My heart pounded as I whispered, "So what do you want from me, Clara? Do you want me to keep writing checks and stay away? Is that it?" She paused, studying me, and for the first time I saw something honest flicker in her gaze. She was actually considering it. "I want you," she said finally, "to stop pretending we're one big happy family. I want you to accept your role. Limited. Distant. Not involved." Her words were cruel. But beneath the cruelty was the truth I needed to hear. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not sadness. Not despair. Something stronger. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. Because if she thought she could erase me, she was about to learn she had underestimated me more than she ever realized. The kitchen smelled of soap and leftover turkey, but the air between us was heavy, poisonous. Clara leaned on the counter with her arms crossed, staring at me like I was some stranger who had wandered in uninvited. I had never felt so small in my own son's home. You keep pushing yourself into everything, she said, her voice calmer now but sharper in meaning. Daniel doesn't say it because he doesn't like conflict, but I'll say it for him. You smother him. You've always smothered him. And now you're doing it to my kids. I shook my head, my throat tight. Clara, I've never tried to smother anyone. I've tried to love. That's all. Love doesn't disappear just because your child grows up and marries someone. It grows. She gave a bitter laugh, tilting her head. You call it love. I call it control. All those gifts, the money, the little comments about how things could be done better. That's not love, Helen. That's your way of holding on to power. Her words pierced deeper than I wanted to admit. Because somewhere, in the quiet corners of my heart, I had kept count. I remembered how many times I'd bailed them out. I remembered paying for Ethan's braces, covering a mortgage payment when Daniel was between jobs, sending money for Lily's summer camp. I'd never demanded repayment, never used it against them. But yes, I remembered. And maybe, just maybe, some part of me had wanted them to remember too. I swallowed hard. I gave because I care. Because I wanted to ease their burdens. Not because I needed leverage. Clara stepped closer, her voice dropping into a cold whisper. You gave because it makes you feel important. And when we don't play along, when we don't bow to your efforts, you sulk. You act wounded. That's manipulation. Helen. Plain and simple. For a moment, the only sound was the clatter of dishes in the sink. My hands trembled as I set down a plate, afraid I might drop it. I looked at her, this woman who had married my son, who had given me grandchildren, who had built walls between me and the people I loved most, and I realized she had been preparing for this confrontation for years. Every little thing I had said, every gesture, she had collected and twisted until she had an arsenal ready to fire. I wanted to scream. To shout that she was wrong. To remind her of the nights I'd stayed up with Daniel when he was sick, the years I had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, the sacrifices she could never even imagine. But I knew the truth. None of that mattered to her. She didn't care about the history that bound me to my son. She cared only about removing me from her picture. Taking a shaky breath, I whispered, You can hate me all you want, Clara. But don't you dare pretend my love for them is anything but real. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Love. You keep using that word. If this is love, then why do I feel trapped every time you come around? Why does Daniel sigh with relief when you finally leave? Why do my kids walk on eggshells when you're here, worried you'll be disappointed if they don't act exactly how you want? I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not true. She shrugged, as if brushing me off entirely. Believe what you want. But here's the reality. You're not the center of this family anymore. You never will be again. You're just extra. An old woman desperate to matter. Those words. They nearly broke me. I felt tears burn at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of her. Not here. Not now. Instead, I forced myself to stand straighter. I steadied my voice even though my heart was cracking. If that's what you believe, then thank you for the truth. Because I've been living under the illusion that I belonged here. That my love meant something. And now I finally understand. It doesn't. Not to you. Her smile faltered for the first time. Just a flicker. She hadn't expected me to answer calmly. She had been ready for tears, for me to beg, for me to fall apart. Instead, I gave her something she didn't know how to handle. Clarity. And since my role here is apparently only financial, I continued, we'll treat it like business from now on. No more gifts. No more last-minute loans. If you need money, you can ask directly, and I'll decide if I want to give it. But I will no longer pay the price of being humiliated just to sit at this table. Her face went pale. You're being ridiculous. No, I said firmly, my voice trembling but strong. I'm being honest. Before she could reply, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Daniel entered, smiling awkwardly, Ethan trailing behind him. How are my 2 favorite ladies doing in here? He asked, trying to lighten the mood he clearly sensed. Clara slipped her mask back on instantly, turning toward him with a bright smile. Oh, just chatting about traditions, honey. Ethan frowned. Dad, Mom won't let us have Grandma's apple crisp. She says it's not good for Christmas. Daniel blinked, confused. Apple crisp? Mom, did you bring it? I did, I said quietly, my voice carrying more weight than I intended. Ethan jumped in. I saw it in the pantry, Dad. Why can't we eat it? It's the best. Clara's hand tightened around her fork. We already had plenty of desserts. I didn't want chaos at the table. Daniel gave a slow nod, clearly unsure how to balance between us. Maybe we can have it later. As a midnight snack. A safe answer. A compromise. That was his way, avoiding conflict, smoothing things over without ever addressing the real wound. But for me, the damage was already done. I looked at him. My son, the boy I had raised into this man, and for the first time I wondered if he even saw me anymore. Or if Clara had already erased me so thoroughly that I was nothing more than an obligation. And that thought, it hurt worse than anything Clara could ever say. I stayed quiet after Daniel's words, but inside me something was breaking apart. He didn't even realize it, how his compromise, his gentle avoidance, was just another way of letting Clara win. I looked at my son, at the man I had poured my whole life into raising, and wondered when he had stopped truly seeing me. Maybe it had been happening for years. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to notice. I forced a smile for the children's sake, though my heart wasn't in it. That's fine, I whispered. Maybe later. Ethan frowned, his fork poking at his plate. But Dad. Later, Daniel said again, more firmly this time, not looking directly at me, not looking directly at Clara either. Just keeping the peace. It was what he had always done. Dinner dragged on after that, the laughter from the kids trying to fill the silence that stretched like a shadow across the table. I nodded and smiled at their stories, but my appetite was gone. Each bite felt like cardboard in my mouth, each sip of wine like sand. When the plates were finally cleared and Clara busied herself with the dishes, I rose quickly and said, I'll help. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could find a moment alone with Daniel. To speak, to explain, to try and reach him. But Clara was too clever for that. She directed every movement like a commander. Daniel, could you check the garage? I think one of the storage boxes is leaking. She sent Ethan with him to help. A few minutes later, she called Lily upstairs, telling her to organize her new clothes before they got wrinkled. And just like that, I was alone with her again, trapped in the very moment she had been waiting for. She scraped food into the trash, her voice sharp and cutting. I hope you understand now. I meant what I said. Helen, you don't belong here the way you think you do. I steadied my hands against the counter. I don't understand. What exactly do you want from me? Her laugh was humorless. Isn't it obvious? I want you to stop inserting yourself into every corner of our lives. Stop with the surprise visits. Stop with the advice. Stop acting like your opinion carries more weight than mine. This is my family now. Not yours. The words hit me like a slap. Not yours. I took a shaky breath. They will always be mine. Daniel is my son. Those children are my grandchildren. You can't take that away from me. She spun around, her eyes blazing. Watch me. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Her chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, her face tight with something between anger and triumph. Mine was filled with a grief so heavy it felt like my body could sink into the floor. Finally, I whispered, if you see me as nothing but a nuisance, then why do you keep taking from me? Why do you let me help with bills, with braces, with camp? If I'm so useless, why do you never refuse the checks I write? Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's different, she said, avoiding my eyes. No, Clara. It's not. You told me I was useless. But the truth is, you've needed me more than you'd ever admit. She slammed the faucet off, water dripping onto the plates stacked in the sink. We take what you give because we have to. Because Daniel's job is stressful, the mortgage is crushing, and the kids have needs. We don't enjoy it. We don't want it. We endure it. Just like we endure you. Those words broke something in me I hadn't realized was fragile. For years, I had been telling myself their acceptance was love. That their gratitude was silent but real. But in that moment, I saw the truth in her eyes. I wasn't wanted. I was tolerated. Tolerated for my wallet. Tolerated for my convenience. Tolerated because I was too soft-hearted to say no. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But instead, something inside me hardened. A clarity I had never known before rose in my chest. "You've just given me a gift, Clara," I said softly. Her eyebrows knitted together. "What are you talking about?" "The truth. You've given me the truth. And now that I see it clearly, I can finally make changes." She squinted at me, suspicious. "What kind of changes?" I smiled, but it wasn't the smile she was used to. It wasn't timid. It wasn't hopeful. It was something steadier, something that made her shift uncomfortably. "From now on, there will be no more gifts. No more surprise checks. No more paying the price of humiliation just to sit here. If I am only family when I open my purse, then from now on, it will be business. Nothing more." Her mouth fell open slightly. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." My voice cut through her protest, stronger than I felt inside. "You said you accept my money because you have to. You said you don't want me around. So from now on, you don't have to endure me. You can carry your precious pressure without me." Her face drained of color. For once, she didn't have a clever comeback. And just then, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Daniel's voice called cheerfully, "Everything okay in here?" He stepped into the kitchen with Ethan right behind him, both of them smiling, unaware of the war that had just been fought in silence. Clara turned to him quickly, her mask snapping back into place. "Just chatting about traditions, darling." Her voice was smooth again, her face calm. But Ethan wasn't fooled. He crossed his arms and said loudly, "Dad, Mom won't let us eat Grandma's apple crisp. It's right there in the pantry. Why can't we have it?" Daniel looked from me to Clara, confused. "Apple crisp? Mom, you really made it." I nodded slowly, my eyes never leaving Clara's. "I did." Clara's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Ethan pressed on. "Why isn't it on the table then?" "It's Christmas. It's tradition." Daniel shifted uneasily, clearly trying to balance the moment. "Maybe we can have it later. As a snack tonight." Another compromise. Another sidestep. Another way of keeping the peace. I forced a tired smile, though my chest ached. "That's fine. Later." But I knew there would be no later. Not anymore. I sat quietly while Daniel tried to steer the dinner back to normal. His voice carried warmth, his smile easy, but the tension sat in the air like smoke no one wanted to acknowledge. The kids fidgeted, unsure whether to laugh at his jokes or stay silent. Clara, of course, played her part perfectly. She laughed at the right moments, leaned against Daniel's shoulder, and poured wine into his glass as though nothing at all had happened. But every now and then, her eyes flicked to me with that same sharp warning. "Know your place." I tried to focus on the children. Ethan asked about school sports, about whether he could join the varsity team in spring. I nodded and encouraged him, telling him how proud I'd be no matter what. Lily leaned in and whispered about her favorite Christmas gift, a book she had begged for. "Grandma, I'll let you read it after me," she promised, her voice sweet. I kissed her forehead, fighting the ache in my chest. They were the reason I kept coming back, the reason I endured Clara's coldness year after year. But even as I smiled at them, my mind spun. Clara's words still echoed inside me. "We don't enjoy it. We don't want it. We endure it." That word, endure, it cut deeper than anything else. For so long, I had been telling myself my love mattered, that my efforts meant something. But in Clara's eyes, I was nothing but a burden she tolerated until she could get what she wanted. When dessert plates were cleared, Clara leaned back in her chair, her voice bright. "Well, I think that was a lovely dinner." She touched Daniel's arm gently. "Don't you agree?" He smiled at her, completely oblivious to the undertone. "Perfect, honey." I excused myself, claiming I needed the restroom. But truthfully, I just needed air. I stepped into the hallway, the house decorated so beautifully it felt almost mocking. Garlands on the staircase, twinkling lights strung across the banister, family photos smiling down from the walls. In every picture, Clara stood at the center, her smile radiant. In only a handful was I even present, and in those I looked like a guest, not family. I lingered by the window, staring out at the snow-covered yard. Neighbors' houses glowed with Christmas lights. Through their windows I saw families gathered together, laughing, sharing stories. I wondered if their homes carried the same cracks beneath the surface, or if I was unlucky enough to be singled out for this kind of cruelty. When I returned, Clara had already organized the evening's next steps. Daniel and Ethan were back in the garage, tinkering with some project. Lily was upstairs again. And Clara was waiting in the kitchen, alone, as though she had planned it that way. She dried her hands on a towel and turned toward me. "You should go soon," she said bluntly. I blinked. "Go." "But it's Christmas." She sighed dramatically, as if I were a child refusing to understand. "Helen, you've had your time with the kids. You've had dinner. They'll be fine without you hovering. Honestly, they need space. Daniel needs space. We all do." I felt my chest tighten. "Space? Clara, I see them less and less every year. You cut me out of birthdays, Thanksgivings, even simple Sunday dinners. And now you want me to leave Christmas early? What am I to you? A stranger?" Her lips curled slightly. "You said it yourself earlier. You're here when it's convenient. And when it's not, well, maybe it's best you understand that your presence isn't required." Her voice was calm, even sweet, but the cruelty in it was sharp enough to draw blood. I steadied myself. If I'm so unwanted, then why keep me tied here? Why keep taking my money? Why smile when I help pay for braces, for camps, for mortgage bills? Clara's eyes darkened. "Because it's easier than saying no. Because Daniel doesn't know how to refuse you. And because sometimes, Helen, it's useful to have someone who's desperate to matter." Her words made my knees weak. For a moment, I thought I might actually collapse right there in the kitchen. Desperate to matter. That's how she saw me. That's how she had always seen me. I gripped the counter, steadying my breath. "I won't do it anymore," I whispered. "What?" Her eyebrows rose. I looked her straight in the eye. "No more money. No more loans. No more pretending. If my role here is only financial, then we'll call it what it is. Business. But family? No. Not anymore." For the first time, Clara looked unsettled. She laughed nervously, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're being dramatic. Daniel would never allow that." I tilted my head, feeling a strange steadiness rise inside me. "Daniel doesn't control me. You don't control me. And if you think you can erase me, you're wrong. Because I finally see you for what you are." Her face paled. She opened her mouth to argue, but just then, footsteps approached. Daniel appeared in the doorway, smiling, holding Ethan's shoulder. "What's going on here? Everything okay?" Clara turned quickly, pasting on her perfect smile. "Of course, honey. We were just talking about traditions. About changes." Daniel chuckled, oblivious. "Well, change isn't always bad." Ethan crossed his arms. "Dad, Mom still won't let us eat Grandma's crisp." Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Maybe later, son. Tonight we've already had enough." But Ethan's voice rose, sharp with teenage defiance. "Why? It's Christmas. Grandma makes it every year. Why can't we just have it now?" Clara's tone snapped, harsher than she intended. "Because I said so. That's why." The room went silent. Daniel's smile faltered. Lily came running down the stairs, sensing the tension. She looked from her mother to me, confusion in her eyes. "What's happening?" I forced a gentle smile for her. "Nothing, sweetheart. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. Daniel tried to laugh it off. "All right, let's not make a big deal out of dessert." He put an arm around Ethan, guiding him back toward the living room. "We'll figure it out later." The kids followed reluctantly, but the damage lingered in the air. Clara looked at me with fury blazing in her eyes. A silent promise. This wasn't over. I couldn't stay any longer. My heart felt too heavy, my dignity too raw. I grabbed my coat, the untouched apple crisp still sitting in its dish. "I think I'll head home," I said quietly. Daniel frowned. "Already?" "Mom, it's too early." "I'm tired," I lied. "It's been a long day." The kids protested, wrapping their arms around me. "Stay, Grandma. Just a little longer." I hugged them tightly, breathing in their warmth, memorizing the feel of their arms around me. Because deep down, I knew this night marked the beginning of something I could never undo. Daniel walked me to the door. His voice was gentle, almost worried. "Mom, are you okay? You seem different." I paused, looking back at the decorated home, the family I was being pushed out of. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about some changes I need to make in the new year." He tilted his head. "What kind of changes?" "Nothing dramatic," I said softly. "Just reassessing some things." He kissed my cheek, still not understanding. Maybe he never would. I stepped out into the cold night air, snowflakes falling against my cheeks. And as I walked to my car, the untouched apple crisp pressed against my chest, I realized something I had never admitted before. Clara wasn't just trying to erase me. She was succeeding. And if I didn't do something soon, there would be nothing left of me in Daniel's life at all. Snow crunched under my shoes as I walked to the car, the dish of apple crisp still warm in my hands. I placed it on the passenger seat gently, like it was something fragile, something that carried not just food but 30 years of family tradition. As I sat behind the wheel, I didn't start the engine right away. Instead, I looked at their house glowing with Christmas lights, laughter faintly spilling from the windows. To anyone walking by, it looked like the picture of happiness. A perfect family celebrating a perfect night. But I knew the truth. Inside those walls, I had just been reminded I was no longer wanted. Not truly. Clara's words echoed again, sharp and deliberate. "We don't enjoy it. We don't want it. We endure it." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. The drive home felt endless. I took the long route through neighborhoods lit with holiday decorations. Families gathered around glowing trees, children running in yards, couples holding hands. Each scene was a reminder of the warmth I was losing. By the time I reached my small apartment, the weight in my chest had grown so heavy I could hardly breathe. I carried the apple crisp inside, set it on the counter untouched, and sank into a chair. The silence was deafening. No laughter. No voices. Just me and the ticking of the clock on the wall. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the dessert I had poured so much love into. It was supposed to bring joy. It was supposed to be shared. Instead, it sat there rejected, a symbol of how I had been pushed aside. Finally, I reached for a notebook and pen. Not to write a grocery list. Not a to-do list. Something else. I began writing down every bit of financial help I had given Daniel and Clara over the years. Every loan. Every gift. Every emergency payment. Every time I had stepped in to keep their family afloat. At first, I thought it would be a handful of numbers. But as I filled line after line, the list grew longer than I expected. Braces for Ethan. Summer camp for Lily. Mortgage payments when Daniel was between jobs. Money slipped into his pocket when I knew they were struggling. Little things, big things, it all added up. By the time I finished, the total nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Over $43,000 in 5 years. I stared at the number, stunned. It was more than I could afford, more than I had realized. I thought about the trips I had never taken, the things I had quietly given up for myself just so I could help them. I thought about the nights I told myself I didn't need new clothes, nicer furniture, or even a better car, because helping Daniel's family was more important. And for what? To be told I was useless. To be reminded my presence was merely tolerated. The tears I had been holding back finally came, hot and uncontrollable. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed, the kind of sobs that left me shaking. For too long, I had been buying acceptance, mistaking tolerance for love. As the crying subsided, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused. I wasn't making excuses for Clara's cruelty. I wasn't pretending Daniel didn't notice. I saw it clearly. I was being used. And I had allowed it. The ringing phone jolted me from my thoughts. Daniel's name lit up the screen. My heart clenched. I knew what this was. Clara had sent him to smooth things over, to patch the cracks just enough to keep me in place. I let it go to voicemail. But it rang again. And again. By the third call, I answered, my voice low. "Hello. Mom." Daniel's voice came quickly, urgent. "Thank God you picked up. Listen, there's been a situation. Clara, she called the police. I froze. The police? Why? She says you threatened her. She says you told her you were cutting off contact with the family and that you scared her. His words tumbled out in a rush. The officers are here now. They want to talk to you. My blood ran cold. Threatened her? After everything she had said to me, after the way she had cornered me, twisted my love into something ugly, she was turning it back on me. Within 20 minutes, 2 officers sat in my living room. One, Officer Wells, was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that seemed to have seen everything. She opened her notebook. Mrs. Carter, your daughter-in-law claims you made threatening statements today. That your behavior was erratic and concerning. Can you tell me your side? For a moment, I almost laughed. The absurdity of it. After years of Clara's quiet manipulations, she had finally overplayed her hand. I spoke calmly, steadily. Officer, Clara told me today that my role in their family is purely financial. That they only tolerate me because of the money I provide. I told her I understood, and that from now on, I would treat it as such. If they need money, they can ask, but I won't continue pretending I am wanted when I am not. She has apparently interpreted that as a threat. The officer scribbled notes. What kind of financial help are we talking about? I slid the notebook across the table. Over the past 5 years, I've given them more than $43,000. Mortgage payments, braces, camps, car repairs, bills. None of which I asked to be repaid. Her eyebrows lifted. That's substantial. Yes, I said softly. And today I realized I wasn't helping them out of love anymore. I was paying for the privilege of being treated poorly. She studied me for a long moment. Did you make any statements that could be taken as threats? Any mention of harm? I shook my head. No. I said only that I would no longer subsidize their lives while being disrespected. Nothing more. The officer nodded, closing her notebook. Mrs. Carter, this sounds like a family disagreement, not a criminal threat. We'll document the call, but there's no evidence of anything more. As they left, I sank back into my chair. I should have felt devastated, broken, ashamed. Instead, I felt something new. Anger. Clean. Sharp anger. Clara had gone too far. By calling the police, she had forced everything into the open. And now, for the first time, there was a record of her lies. My phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. Mom, I'm sorry about the police. Clara was upset. She overreacted. Let's talk tomorrow and sort this out. Sort this out. As if this was just another misunderstanding. As if Clara hadn't carefully orchestrated every bit of it. I stared at the message for a long time before setting the phone down. For once, I didn't rush to fix things. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my laptop. Because something had been gnawing at me for years, something I had pushed aside. I knew almost nothing about Clara's past. She was vague about her life before meeting Daniel. Where she went to school. Where she worked. Even her maiden name, I barely remembered. And that night, with my anger fueling me, I began to search. The glow of my laptop screen lit the dark apartment, the only sound the hum of the heater kicking on and off. My hands trembled slightly as I typed, Clara Mitchell Denver, into the search bar. I hadn't used her maiden name in years, but the letters felt strange and bitter on my tongue as I whispered them out loud. At first, nothing. A few scattered mentions on social media, birthday wishes, a photo of her in a coffee shop years ago. All surface level. But I dug deeper. I searched records, public filings, anything that might give me a hint of the woman who had managed to twist her way into the center of my family while pushing me out. What I found chilled me. Court records. 3 women named Clara Mitchell in the Denver area had been involved in civil cases between 2010 and 2015. 2 were clearly not her. Different ages, different backgrounds. But the third matched too perfectly to ignore. It was an embezzlement case. 2014. A woman named Clara J. Mitchell, 28 years old at the time, accused of siphoning money from client accounts at a small firm where she worked as office manager. The case had been settled quietly, records sealed after an agreement was reached. But the initial filings were still available. I read every line, my stomach twisting tighter with each word. She had been accused of systematically stealing for nearly 8 months, covering her tracks, moving money around until someone finally noticed. The company pressed charges, but before it could go to trial, she settled. And just months later, she met my son at a coffee shop. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. Could it be her? The timelines lined up too neatly. And if it was her, then everything I had suspected suddenly made sense. Her obsession with controlling the household finances, her insistence that Daniel leave money matters to her, the way she kept me at arm's length while still clinging tightly to my financial contributions. This wasn't just about dislike. This wasn't just about her wanting to erase me. This was about control, money, power. The thought of Daniel, my sweet boy, my only son, being caught in the web of someone who might have a history of fraud made my stomach turn. And the children. Oh God, the children. I rubbed my temples, my mind racing. What if she was planning something again? What if all the money I had been giving wasn't going where I thought? The next morning, I called my bank. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. I'd like copies of all checks I've written to Daniel or Clara over the past 5 years, I told the clerk. Then I called my financial advisor, someone I trusted. Go over my accounts, I asked him. Look for large withdrawals, unusual payments, anything. By the end of the day, I had the numbers. And what I saw made my blood run cold. The $43,000 I had tallied last night? That was only part of it. There had been gift cards, direct deposits, checks, even payments made directly to vendors for things Clara insisted they needed. The total was over $67,000. $67,000. I sat frozen, staring at the paperwork. My whole retirement plan, my careful savings, all chipped away not by emergencies but by Clara's constant demands, disguised as needs. And some of those emergencies didn't make sense. Payments requested during months when Daniel's salary should have been more than enough. Requests that coincided, I now realized, with Clara's new handbags, her spa days, her yoga memberships. I thought back to her words in the kitchen. We don't enjoy it. We endure it. The truth was even worse. She had been using me, draining me. And Daniel, blinded by love and trust, had let her. The anger that rose in me was different from before. It wasn't sharp and emotional. It was steady, heavy, like iron settling into my bones. I couldn't ignore it anymore. That afternoon, I drove to their neighborhood and parked across the street from their house. I told myself I wasn't spying, just observing. But deep down, I knew I needed to see with my own eyes. At 2:30, a delivery truck pulled up. Not a standard package truck, but one from an expensive boutique furniture store downtown. 2 men carried a brand new dining room set. Polished wood, elegant chairs, a sideboard that must have cost more than most people's cars. I sat in my car, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Half an hour later, Clara's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out with shopping bags from Nordstrom, Anthropologie, and 2 other upscale stores. She looked radiant, her coat swinging, her hands full of luxuries. Just one day earlier, she had told me they were under financial pressure. That they had no choice but to accept my money. That I was a burden they endured. And yet here she was, on a shopping spree, buying furniture and clothes worth thousands. The betrayal stung so deeply that for a moment I couldn't even breathe. My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. I answered. Mom, he said softly, I'm glad you picked up. We need to talk about last night. Clara was upset. She overreacted. I think there are misunderstandings we can clear up. I looked at the house across the street, at Clara unloading her bags with a smile on her face, and my heart broke all over again. Daniel, I asked, my voice careful, how much money do you think I've given your family these past 5 years? There was silence on the other end. A long, uneasy silence. I don't know, Mom. We never kept track. You've been generous, but... 67,000, I interrupted, my voice shaking. I have records. Cancelled checks. Bank statements. $67,000. The silence stretched again. So long I thought the call had dropped. Finally he whispered. That can't be right. It is, I said. And Clara told me yesterday you accept my help because you have to. Because you feel obligated. She told me my presence is the price you pay for my money. Another silence. Then finally he said quietly, She said that? Yes, she did. My voice cracked. And you let her? On the other end, I could hear him breathing, heavy and uneven. Mom, it's not like that. She's stressed. She didn't mean. She meant it, I whispered, staring at the bags Clara carried into the house. And it's time you opened your eyes. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't have an immediate answer. And for the first time in years, I didn't try to rescue him from the silence. Because deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just about family tension. It was about deception. And Clara wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows of passing cars sliding across the walls. My mind kept replaying everything. Clara's words, Daniel's silences, the number 67,000 etched into my brain like a scar. I turned onto my side, clutching the pillow as if it could comfort me. But the truth was too loud to ignore. Clara wasn't just cold. She wasn't just resentful. She was calculated. And if the embezzlement record I found really was hers, then she was far more dangerous than Daniel could ever imagine. By morning, I was exhausted but determined. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat back at the table, and pulled my laptop toward me again. My hands shook as I typed more searches. Clara J. Mitchell embezzlement, Clara Mitchell Denver 2015, Amanda Foster alias, anything that might connect the dots. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Clara Mitchell had used more than one last name. There were sealed records, references to a consulting company that no longer existed, and even an old newspaper snippet about a local business, losing significant funds under mysterious circumstances. No names were listed, but the timeline matched perfectly with the embezzlement filing. Piece by piece, her mask was coming off. And then, in the middle of my frantic search, my phone rang. The number was unknown. Mrs. Cotter? A firm female voice asked. This is Detective Sarah Reeves, Denver Police Financial Crimes Unit. My heart jumped into my throat. Yes. This is Helen. I understand you've been researching a woman named Clara Mitchell. Can I ask why? I froze. How do you know that? Certain searches are flagged in our system when linked to open investigations, she explained calmly. Clara Mitchell is a person of interest in an ongoing case. We'd like to speak with you about your connection to her. My breath caught. She's my daughter-in-law. She married my son. There was silence on the line. Then the detective said, Would you be willing to come into the station tomorrow morning? We need to go over some details, and there are things you need to know. I agreed, though my voice trembled. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I barely ate. I barely moved from my chair. Every memory of Clara replayed in my mind, now shaded with suspicion. The way she had always insisted on controlling the bills. The way she guarded Daniel's bank cards like her life depended on it. The way she made excuses to keep me away, but never from my checkbook. By the time morning came, I was running on little more than nerves and willpower. At 9 o'clock sharp, I sat across from Detective Reeves in her office. She had kind but serious eyes, her desk stacked with folders. On the top one, clipped neatly, was Clara's photo. Mrs. Carter, the detective began, what I'm about to share with you may be difficult to hear. But it's important you know. I folded my hands in my lap, bracing myself. Clara Mitchell has been using multiple identities for at least 10 years. The embezzlement case you found online, that was just the beginning. She has a documented history of financial manipulation, and she's been married before. Twice. Under different names. Both marriages ended the same way. She drained her husband's finances, then disappeared. Each time, she reinvented herself and started over. I felt sick. My voice was barely a whisper. And Daniel? My son. The detective nodded solemnly. From everything we've gathered, he is her latest target. The children, they're his biologically, from what we can tell. But we believe she has been planning her next disappearance for months. We have surveillance photos of her visiting a second apartment, using a car registered under another name, and transferring funds into hidden accounts. My stomach dropped. She's planning to leave him. Detective Reeves leaned forward. Yes. And we believe she's preparing to take as much money as she can when she does. Your financial contributions have been part of that funding. The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of the chair, struggling to breathe. I thought of Ethan and Lily, of their smiles, of the way they ran into my arms every time they saw me. She would leave them? I whispered, horrified. She's left children before, the detective said quietly. In her previous marriages, they weren't her biological kids, but she had raised them for years. And yet, when she decided it was time, she walked away without looking back. Tears stung my eyes. Those kids, they love her. They trust her. And that, the detective said, is what makes this so dangerous. I sat in silence, my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to Daniel, to shake him and make him see. But the detective raised a hand. You can't warn him yet. If we're going to stop her, we need her to expose herself. And you, Mrs. Carter, might be the key. Me. My voice cracked. Yes. She trusts you just enough to play her game. If you offer her something tempting, something big enough to trigger her greed, she'll reveal the accounts we're trying to trace. We can record everything, build a case, and stop her before she vanishes. My chest tightened. The thought of playing along with Clara's lies made my skin crawl. But the thought of losing Daniel and the kids to her scheme, that was worse. What would I have to do? I asked, my voice steadying despite the fear. The detective opened the folder, sliding papers toward me. We'll guide you through it. But it starts with one simple lie. You tell her you want to give Daniel and the kids an early inheritance. A large amount. $200,000. Enough to hook her interest. Then you request account information for tax purposes. If she's hiding accounts, she won't be able to resist. I stared at the number on the paper. 200,000. My savings couldn't even begin to cover that. But that wasn't the point. It didn't have to be real. It just had to be believable. I swallowed hard. And when she gives me the accounts? The detective's eyes hardened. We'll have her. And this time, she won't walk away free. I left the station feeling both terrified and oddly empowered. For years, Clara had painted me as weak, needy, desperate. But now, I held the chance to turn the tables. To protect Daniel. To protect Ethan and Lily. To finally stand up, not just for myself, but for all of us. As I drove home, I glanced at the apple crisp still sitting on the counter where I'd left it the night before. Cold. Untouched. Forgotten. I slid it into the oven, reheating it slowly. When I finally sat down with a warm slice, the sweet scent filling my small apartment, I whispered to myself. This time, Clara. This time you chose the wrong woman. The next week felt like the longest of my life. I moved carefully, every word, every action weighed with intention. Clara had no idea I had seen behind her mask. She had no idea I had spoken to detectives. To her, I was still the pathetic old woman desperate for scraps of affection, still the wallet she could squeeze whenever bills, or shopping desires, piled up. When I called her, I softened my voice, just as I had for years. Clara, I said gently, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About my health, about the future. I don't know how many years I have left, and I'd rather see Daniel and the children enjoy some of my savings while I'm still here. An early inheritance, you could say. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear her calculating. Then her voice, sweet as honey. Helen, that's incredibly generous. You don't need to do that. I smiled bitterly. I knew that tone. She wasn't refusing. She was thrilled. No, I insist, I said. It would be 200,000. But before anything, my financial advisor needs the correct account information for tax purposes. If you could send me the details, we can move quickly. She tried to play it cool, but I heard the excitement in her breath. Of course. I'll talk to Daniel and send the information. That night, the detectives wired my phone. Every message, every call would be recorded. I barely slept, nerves twisting inside me. But when the morning came, my resolve was steady. At 10:37 a.m., Clara's text came through. A string of numbers, routing codes, account names, none of which matched Daniel's. None of which he would have known about. I forwarded everything to Detective Reeves immediately. Within hours, a warrant was in motion. By evening, Clara was sitting at her dining room table, smiling at me across flickering candles, completely unaware of what was coming. She poured me a glass of wine, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Helen, I have to say, this gesture of yours means more than you realize. It shows me you really do care about the family." "About me?" I held her gaze. For the first time, I didn't flinch. "Yes, Clara," I said softly. "I care very much about this family. That's why I'm doing it." The knock on the door was sharp, decisive. Clara frowned, rising to answer. When she opened it, 2 detectives stepped inside, badges flashing. "Clara Mitchell? You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes." The color drained from her face. "What? This must be a mistake." She turned wildly toward Daniel, who had just come into the hallway, confusion on his face. Tell them it's a mistake." But Daniel wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. His eyes wide, his voice a whisper. "Mom, what's happening?" I swallowed hard. "The truth, Daniel. The truth that's been hiding right under your nose." The officers cuffed Clara as she shrieked, her mask finally cracking. "This is your fault, Helen. You meddling old woman. You ruined everything." I stood tall, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "No, Clara. You ruined everything when you thought love could be bought, when you treated family as a bank instead of a blessing." Ethan and Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, their young faces pale and frightened. I forced a smile for them, my voice softening. "It's okay, darlings. Everything's going to be all right now." As Clara was led away, the house felt heavier than ever. Years of lies unraveling in a single night. Daniel sat on the couch, his head in his hands, his voice breaking. "I didn't see it, Mom. I didn't see any of it. How could I have been so blind?" I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because you loved her. And love can blind us, Daniel. It makes us ignore what we don't want to see." Tears filled his eyes. "I let her treat you that way. I didn't protect you." I squeezed his hand. "You don't need to apologize to me. What matters now is protecting your children, protecting yourself. And remembering that love isn't control, it isn't manipulation. Love is respect. And if someone demands payment for love, it isn't love at all." For the first time in years, Daniel leaned against me like he had when he was a boy. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered. In the weeks that followed, Clara's crimes unraveled in court. Hidden accounts traced, fraudulent transactions exposed, a trail of broken lives from her past came forward. She would not be walking away this time. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. The children struggled with the betrayal. Daniel fought guilt every day. But there was healing too. Slowly, painfully we rebuilt. This time, not with gifts or money, but with time, honesty and love. One evening, Ethan hugged me tightly and whispered, "Grandma, you're not useless. You're the strongest person I know." I held him close, tears slipping down my cheeks. For the first time in years I believed it. And the apple crisp? The very next Christmas, it sat proudly in the center of the table. Daniel served it himself, placing a slice in front of me with a trembling smile. "Tradition," he said simply. And I knew then that no matter how much had been lost, something had been saved too. The truth had set us free. Moral lesson. Sometimes, the cruelest betrayal comes not from strangers but from those we welcome into our homes. Love should never come with a price tag, and respect cannot be bought. True family is not measured in money or gifts, but in loyalty, honesty, and the courage to stand by one another. When we finally refuse to be used, we teach others the true meaning of love, and we rediscover our own strength.